The sound of hushed voices drifted up from the garden, carrying fragments of a conversation I was never meant to hear. I stood frozen at my bedroom window, my camera forgotten in my hands, as my son's words shattered the peaceful morning. Mom's getting older, Lorelai. We need to think about what's best for her future. My name is Valeria, and at 63, I never expected to become a problem that needed solving, especially not by my own flesh and blood. I'd welcomed Elijah and his wife into my estate 6 months ago, thinking it would bring us closer as a family. Now, watching them huddled together on my prized rose garden bench, the same bench where I'd nursed Elijah through countless skinned knees and broken hearts, I realized how naive I'd been. Your mother's just set in her ways. Lorelai's voice carried clearly through the morning air. My mom would be much more adaptable. The Sunset Valley retirement community has excellent reviews, and the rest of her words faded into white noise as my fingers tightened around my camera. 30 years of capturing human nature through my lens had taught me to recognize a coup in progress. Valeria? A knock at my door made me jump. Are you ready for breakfast? I quickly composed myself, setting my camera down. Coming, Lorelai. The breakfast table had become our daily battlefield, though you'd never know it from the pleasant smile Lorelai wore as she poured coffee. Elijah sat absorbed in his phone, barely looking up as I took my seat. I made your favorite scones, Lorelai announced, sliding a plate toward me. The ones with lavender, just like you taught me. I took a bite, noting how she'd altered my recipe. Too sweet, as always. Thank you, dear. They're interesting. Mom, Elijah finally looked up. We've been thinking about the East Wing renovation. I cut in, watching their expressions carefully. I was actually considering converting it into a photography studio. Share my craft with the community. Lorelai's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. But we discussed using that space for your mother, yes. I smiled, meeting her startled gaze. I heard you both in the garden earlier. The silence that followed was delicious. Elijah's face flushed red. He'd always been terrible at confrontation, just like his father. Mom, we were going to talk to you about this properly, he stammered. We just want what's best for you. What's best for me? I set down my napkin. I've traveled to 47 countries, documented 3 revolutions, and raised you alone after your father passed. Now you think I need managing? That's not what Lorelai started. My late husband built this estate from nothing. I continued, my voice steady. Every brick, every rosebush, every memory here was earned. And you think you can simply replace me? Mom, please. Elijah reached for my hand, but I pulled away. No, let's be honest for once. I stood, looking between them. You see an aging widow with a valuable estate? I see my son, who I thought I raised better, plotting with his wife to shuffle me off to Sunset Valley while they play house with her mother. That's not fair, Lorelai protested, but her voice wavered. Life rarely is, dear. I picked up my coffee cup. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some calls to make. About the East Wing, of course. As I left the dining room, I heard Elijah call after me, but I didn't turn back. In my study, I sank into my leather chair, surrounded by photographs from my travels. Warriors in Papua New Guinea, monks in Tibet, revolutionaries in South America, all had taught me something about power, respect, and survival. My fingers traced the edge of a particular photo. Me standing proud atop Machu Picchu, camera in hand, the world at my feet. That woman hadn't let anything defeat her, and neither would I. I reached for my phone, scrolling to a number I hadn't called in years. My old friend Heidi would know exactly what to do. She'd always said I was too soft with Elijah, too willing to give without demanding respect in return. As the phone rang, I glanced at the garden where my son and his wife still sat, probably damage controlling their failed coup. They thought they were dealing with a helpless old woman. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Heidi, it's Valeria. Remember that favor you owe me from Marrakesh? I smiled as I watched Elijah and Lorelai through the window. I think it's time to cash it in. You want me to do what? Heidi's laughter echoed through the small cafe where we'd arranged to meet. Pretend to be a mysterious buyer interested in your estate? Valeria, you've finally lost it. I stirred my espresso, watching the foam swirl. Not you specifically, but I need someone to create pressure. And this is about teaching your son and that wife of his a lesson? Heidi leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with the same mischief I remembered from our college days. Count me in, but we'll need help. That's how I found myself sitting across from Freddie, a real estate agent Heidi knew, 3 hours later. His office screamed success. All glass and chrome with a view of the city that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Let me get this straight, Freddie said, tapping his pen against his desk. You want me to represent a mysterious international buyer who's interested in your estate? And create some complications for your son and daughter-in-law? Exactly. I pulled out an envelope. Here's the first payment. There will be more. Freddie whistled as he counted the cash. This is serious money, Valeria. Are you sure you want to go through with this? They're planning to ship me off to a retirement home, I replied flatly. What would you do? He nodded slowly. Fair point, but we need to make this believable. Real estate transactions have paper trails. That's where I come in, Heidi interjected, pulling out her laptop. I've set up a shell company. Everything will look legitimate. As they discussed details, my phone buzzed. A text from Elijah. Mom, can we talk? About this morning? I typed back. Having lunch with friends. We'll talk later. Your son? Freddie asked, noting my expression. He's trying to smooth things over. I put the phone away. He always does this. Acts first, thinks later, then expects me to forgive and forget. Well, Freddie grinned. He's about to learn actions have consequences. I'll make the first contact tomorrow. How much pressure do you want me to apply? Enough to make them sweat, I said. But nothing illegal. I want them to feel what it's like to lose control of their home. Just like they're planning for me. Heidi touched my arm. And what about you? What will you do while this plays out? I pulled out a worn travel journal. Remember our trip to Nepal? The monastery where we stayed? The one where you took that amazing photo of the sunrise? Heidi's eyes widened. You're not thinking of a year-long spiritual retreat, I announced. It's perfect. I'll be unreachable except for emergencies, while Freddie here creates havoc with property taxes, zoning laws, and a very persistent potential buyer. Freddie whistled again. That's actually brilliant. They can't move Lorelei's mother in if they're worried about losing the house entirely. And you'll document everything? I asked Heidi. She patted her laptop. Every email, every phone call, every panicked reaction. You'll have front row seats to the whole show. As if on cue, my phone rang. Lorelei's number flashed on the screen. Perfect timing, I murmured, answering the call. Hello? Valeria, I hope I'm not interrupting. Lorelei's voice dripped honey. About this morning, we really should discuss things as a family. I caught Heidi's eye and winked. Actually, I'm glad you called. I just got some interesting news about the estate. The estate? Her voice sharpened instantly. Yes, apparently there's been an inquiry. Something about international investors. I paused for effect. But we can discuss that later. You wanted to talk about this morning? The silence on the other end was telling. I could practically hear her mind racing, calculating. Yes, but maybe we should wait until you're home, she stammered. When will you be back? Oh, I'm not sure. I have a few more meetings. I smiled at Freddie, who was already drafting the first official inquiry letter. Don't worry about dinner. After hanging up, I sat back, feeling lighter than I had in months. And so it begins. You're scary when you're plotting revenge, Heidi observed, but she was smiling. Remind me never to cross you. It's not revenge, I corrected her, pulling out my old camera. It's a lesson in respect and consequences. Speaking of which, I snapped a quick photo of Freddie at his desk. Would you mind if I document this journey? The photographer emerges. Heidi laughed. Just like old times. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Elijah. Mom, Lorelai says someone's interested in buying the estate. What's going on? I showed the message to Freddie and Heidi. Should I respond? Let him stew, Freddie advised, sealing the official inquiry letter. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. As I left the office, I felt a familiar thrill, the same one I used to get before embarking on a challenging photo assignment. But this time, instead of capturing other people's stories, I was finally taking control of my own. I waited until dinner to drop my bombshell. The tension around the table was already thick enough to cut with a knife. Elijah had been checking his phone obsessively since Freddie's letter arrived, and Lorelai kept shooting me nervous glances over her untouched salmon. I've been doing some thinking, I announced, setting down my fork, about what you said regarding my future. Lorelai perked up immediately. Oh? We'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm going on a retreat, I said, watching their faces carefully. For a year. Elijah choked on his wine. A year? Mom, you can't be serious. I'm perfectly serious. I pulled out a brochure I'd prepared with Heidi. The Golden Path Monastery. They have a wonderful program for spiritual seekers my age. But Lorelai's voice wavered. What about the estate? The buyer who's interested. Oh, you can handle that, I said breezily. I'll give you power of attorney while I'm gone. Limited, of course. The color drained from Lorelai's face. Limited? You can manage the day-to-day affairs, but no major decisions. I took a sip of wine. No sales, no significant changes to the property. I wouldn't want to come back to find everything different. Elijah pushed his plate away. Mom, this is crazy. You can't just disappear for a year. Why not? I spent 3 months photographing tribal ceremonies in Papua New Guinea when you were in college. Remember? That was different. I was young and now I'm old? I raised an eyebrow. Too old to make my own decisions? The silence that followed was deafening. Lorelai's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down. She cleared her throat. When would you leave? Next week. I watched her eyes widen. I've already booked my flights. Next week? Elijah stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. This is insane. What about the property taxes that just came in? And this mysterious buyer who keeps calling? I shrugged. Like I said, you'll have limited power of attorney. You can handle it. Handle it? His voice rose. Mom, they're saying the taxes have been miscalculated for years. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Really? I feigned surprise. How strange. Well, I'm sure between the two of you, you can figure something out. You were so confident about managing things this morning. Lorelai's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. Valeria, perhaps we should discuss this further. Maybe delay your trip until... Until what? I interrupted softly. Until you've sorted out my future for me? Until your mother is comfortably installed in my home? The glass slipped from her fingers, spilling water across the table. Elijah jumped up to grab napkins, but I remained seated, watching Lorelai's face crumple. You heard that part too? I hear everything in this house, dear. It was my home long before it was yours. Elijah returned with the napkins, his movements jerky with anger or anxiety. Probably both. Mom, we were just exploring options. Nothing was decided. Exactly. I stood up, smoothing my napkin. Nothing was decided, and now nothing will be decided, at least not for a year. But the buyer, Lorelai started. Can wait, I finished firmly. Or not. Either way, I'll be unreachable except for genuine emergencies. My lawyer has all the necessary paperwork. Your lawyer? Elijah's voice cracked. You've already talked to a lawyer? I walked to the sideboard and pulled out a thick envelope. Everything's here. Power of attorney documents, contact information for emergencies, details about the retreat. I'm sure you'll manage beautifully. Mom, please. Elijah followed me as I headed for the door. Can we just talk about this? I turned to face him, seeing for a moment the little boy who used to run to me with his problems, expecting me to fix everything. We are talking, Elijah. I'm telling you I'm taking control of my own life, whether you approve or not. Later that night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom. Lorelai's voice rose occasionally. Something about her mother, about plans ruined, about the mysterious buyer who seemed to know too much about the property's history. I packed my camera bag, checking each lens carefully. My phone buzzed with a message from Heidi. Freddie says Phase 1 is complete. Ready for Phase 2? I typed back, absolutely. Let the games begin. Through my window, I could see the lights of the city spreading out below the estate. Somewhere out there, Freddie was preparing the next round of complications for my son and his wife to handle. And I was preparing for something else entirely. I picked up my favorite camera and took one last photo of my bedroom, the room they'd planned to give to Lorelai's mother. The irony wasn't lost on me. The monastery in Nepal was exactly as I remembered it, though I had no intention of staying there for more than a few days. As I settled into my Spartan room, my phone lit up with messages from Heidi. You won't believe what just happened. Her text read, followed by a video attachment. The clip showed Lorelai and Elijah outside Freddie's office, their faces tight with stress. Freddie had positioned a hidden camera perfectly. Bless his thorough nature. The property taxes are non-negotiable. Freddie's voice came through clearly. And my client is very interested in the historical value of the estate. They're prepared to make a compelling offer. We're not selling, Elijah insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. The estate isn't even officially on the market, Lorelai added. My client has ways of acquiring what they want, Freddie replied smoothly. Perhaps if your mother-in-law were here? She's unreachable, Lorelai snapped, on some spiritual journey. I smiled, switching off the video. Perfect. Mind if I join you? A voice asked, making me look up. A woman about my age stood there, camera hanging from her neck. I'm Casey. Valeria, I replied, gesturing to the empty cushion beside me. You're a photographer too? Travel journalist, she said, settling down. Though lately I've been more focused on the travel than the journalist part. You? Just finding myself, I said, then couldn't help laughing at how cliché it sounded. Casey grinned. Running away or running towards something? Both, maybe. I showed her the video on my phone. Teaching my son and daughter-in-law a lesson about respect. As I explained my situation, Casey's eyes widened, then crinkled with amusement. That's either the most brilliant or most devious thing I've ever heard. Why not both? I checked another message from Heidi. Apparently, Lorelai had spent hours researching property tax laws and historical building regulations. So, where are you really going? Casey asked. Because I'm guessing this monastery is just a stopover. I hesitated, then decided to trust my instincts. There was something about Casey that reminded me of myself at my best. Curious, adventurous, unafraid. I have a list, I admitted, pulling out my worn travel journal. Places I photographed in my prime, stories I never finished telling. Casey leaned in, examining the marked pages. Tibet, Indonesia, Peru. Ambitious for a year. Want to join me? The words surprised even me as they came out. I could use a travel companion who understands what I'm doing. Running away while orchestrating elaborate revenge? She laughed. Count me in. I've got nothing better to do. My phone buzzed again. Elijah this time. Mom, please call us. There are some serious issues with the estate we need to discuss. I showed Casey the message. Should I respond? Depends. Has he learned his lesson yet? Not even close. I typed a quick reply. Signal here very weak. We'll try to call when possible. Trust you can handle everything. Love, Mom. Casey pulled out her own phone, showing me her travel blog. We could document your journey. Not the revenge part, obviously, but the rediscovery. It might help others who feel pushed aside. Before I could respond, another message from Heidi popped up. Freddie just dropped the bombshell about the Historical Preservation Society's interest in the property. Lorelai looks ready to explode. Your friend Heidi seems to be enjoying this, Casey observed. She's wanted me to stand up to them for months. I scrolled through more updates. Apparently, Lorelai's mother called today too, asking when she could move in. The timing couldn't be better, Casey said. So, partners? She held out her hand. I'll help you document your journey if you let me share the story, anonymously, of course. I shook her hand, feeling more energized than I had in years. Deal. Where should we go first? Well, she pulled out a map. I hear Tibet is beautiful this time of year, and very hard to reach by phone. As we planned our route, my phone kept buzzing with messages from home. I silenced it, focusing instead on Casey's stories about her own travels. For the first time since overhearing that conversation in my garden, I felt truly free. You know, Casey said as we headed to dinner, your son and his wife might actually thank you for this someday. Thank me? For abandoning them with a financial mess and a mysterious buyer? For teaching them that actions have consequences, she corrected, and that older doesn't mean powerless. I thought about Elijah and Lorelai, probably pacing the estate right now, drowning in paperwork and uncertainty. Maybe. But first, they have to learn the hard way. The best lessons usually are, Casey agreed. Now, about that story you never finished in Tibet. Hold that pose, I called to Casey as she balanced precariously on the ancient temple steps in Tibet. The morning sun caught her silver hair, creating a halo effect I hadn't seen since my professional days. Perfect. Still can't believe we snuck past those guards. She laughed, climbing down. You're a terrible influence, Valeria. Says the woman who convinced me to join that midnight meditation session with the monks. 3 months had passed since we'd left Nepal, and Casey had become more than just a travel companion. She was my confidant, my co-conspirator, and sometimes my conscience. My phone chimed, our daily update from Heidi. Want to see how the kids are doing? I asked, opening the message. Casey peered over my shoulder at the photo. It showed Elijah in Freddie's office again, looking considerably more disheveled than the last time. The Historical Society is demanding a full architectural survey, Heidi's message read. Lorelai's mother keeps calling about moving in. They're cracking. You know, Casey said carefully, your son looks really stressed. I zoomed in on Elijah's face, noting the dark circles under his eyes. Something twisted in my chest, but I pushed it away. He brought this on himself. Did he? Or did his wife? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Elijah's number. I almost declined it, but Casey caught my hand. Answer it, she said softly. You're teaching them a lesson, not torturing them. I took a deep breath and accepted the call. Hello? Mom? Elijah's voice cracked. Finally, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. The reception here is very spotty, I lied, watching prayer flags flutter against the mountain backdrop. Is everything all right? No, nothing's all right. This buyer won't back off. The tax office is threatening liens, and now some historical society is involved. I don't know what to do. I closed my eyes, remembering his words from that morning in the garden. We need to think about what's best for her future. I'm sure you and Lorelai can handle it, I said evenly. You seemed quite capable of handling my affairs before. The silence that followed was heavy. Mom, about that, I'm sorry, we shouldn't have... Shouldn't have what? I pressed. Plan to ship me off to Sunset Valley? Replace me with Lorelai's mother? It wasn't like that, he protested weakly. Then what was it like, Elijah? More silence. Then, I messed up, didn't I? Yes, I said, but gently. You did. Will you come home? Help us sort this out? Casey was watching me intently, but I shook my head. Not yet. I'm learning a lot here about family, respect, and karma. Karma? He sounded confused. Ask Lorelai about it. I'm sure she'll understand perfectly. I paused. How is she handling everything? He sighed. Not well. Her mother keeps pressuring us about moving in, but with all these complications, life rarely works out exactly as we plan it, does it? Mom. His voice softened. I miss you. The twist in my chest returned, stronger this time. I miss you too, honey, but this journey is important to me. After hanging up, I found Casey watching me with a knowing smile. He's starting to get it, isn't he? Maybe, I admitted, checking another message from Heidi. Oh, this is interesting. Lorelai's mother is threatening to buy her own place instead. Sounds like your plan is working perfectly, Casey said, adjusting her camera strap. So why do you look sad? I gestured to the ancient temple before us. All these sacred places we visited, they all teach the same thing. Karma isn't about revenge. It's about balance. And you're wondering if you've gone too far? No, I said, then corrected myself. Maybe, I don't know. Casey touched my arm. You're not being cruel, Valeria. You're teaching them something valuable. Look at your son. He's already starting to understand. But maybe it's time to shift the lesson. Show them there's a path to redemption. I thought about Elijah's voice, about the stress in his face. What do you suggest? We're heading to Indonesia next, right? When I nodded, she continued. Why not send them something? A photo, a letter. Show them you're not just running away, but finding yourself. Give them a glimpse of the woman they tried to dismiss. I pulled out my camera, reviewing the shots I'd taken that morning. You know what? You're right. Later that evening, I selected the best photo, me standing proudly against the Tibetan sunrise, looking every bit the accomplished photographer I used to be. I attached it to an email with a simple message. Still learning, still growing, still strong. The estate's future depends on whether you learn to see me as I really am, not as you assumed I should be. Love, Mom. Perfect, Casey approved, reading over my shoulder. Now, about that temple in Bali we were discussing. I hit send and packed away my camera. Lead the way, partner. We've got more stories to tell. The Bali sunset painted the sky orange as I checked my messages at our beachfront cafe. 6 months into my journey, and Heidi's updates had become increasingly dramatic. You need to see this, I said to Casey, holding up my phone. A video played, showing Elijah and Lorelai in what appeared to be a heated argument in our garden. I can't take it anymore. Lorelai's voice was shrill. My mother's furious, the Historical Society is breathing down our necks, and that buyer keeps increasing their offer. What do you want me to do? Elijah shot back. Mom's gone, we can't sell without her consent, and everything's falling apart. Call her again. Make her come back. She won't answer. And honestly, can you blame her? We were going to send her away, Lorelai. Her own home, and we were going to... Don't you dare make this my fault. Lorelai's mascara was running. This was our plan, remember? Both of us. Casey whistled low. Looks like they're reaching breaking point. My phone rang. Heidi's number. Speaking of breaking points, Val, we have a situation, Heidi said without preamble. Lorelai's mother showed up at the estate today. She's refusing to leave until she speaks with you. I sat up straighter. What? She's camping out in the living room. Apparently she sold her house already, expecting to move in. Freddie's having a field day with this. He's hinting that the mysterious buyer might be interested in her property too. That wasn't part of the plan, I said, catching Casey's concerned look. Plans change, Heidi replied. But there's more. Elijah's been asking questions about the property taxes, digging through old records. He's getting suspicious. I rubbed my temples. How suspicious? He visited the Historical Society yesterday. Their representative had no idea about any preservation demands. Damn, I muttered. He's figuring it out. Casey leaned in. Maybe it's time for a new strategy. I nodded slowly. Heidi, tell Freddie to back off a bit. No more pressure about the buyer for now. And Lorelai's mother? Let her stay. In fact, I smiled as an idea formed. Let her experience exactly what she was planning for me. After hanging up, I showed Casey another message that had just arrived. From Elijah. Mom, I know what you're doing. The taxes, the buyer, all of it. Can we talk? Really talk? Casey read it over my shoulder. He's smarter than you gave him credit for. He's his father's son, I admitted. Always could see through my schemes eventually. So what now? I started typing. You're right. Let's talk. Video call in 1 hour? The response was immediate. Yes, please. That hour felt like the longest of my journey. Casey helped me set up my laptop on our balcony, making sure the temple in the background was visible. When Elijah's face appeared on screen, I barely recognized him. He looked older, tired, but somehow more like the son I'd raised. Hi, Mom, he said softly. Nice backdrop. Thanks. How's your house guest? He grimaced. Lorelai's mother is challenging. Now I understand why you... He trailed off. Why I what? Why you did all this. The mysterious buyer, the tax problems, everything. It was never real, was it? I held his gaze through the screen. What makes you say that? Because I know you, Mom. You never let anyone push you around. Not really. He ran a hand through his hair. We were horrible to you. Yes, I agreed. You were. I'm sorry. Not just for the retirement home plan, but for forgetting who you are. Who you've always been. I felt Casey squeeze my shoulder supportively. And who am I, Elijah? A force of nature. He smiled weakly. A world-traveling photographer who raised me single-handedly and built an empire from Dad's dream. Someone who deserves respect, not retirement plans. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away. And Lorelai? His expression hardened. We're working through things. Her mother's presence is actually helping, believe it or not. Shows her exactly what we were trying to do to you. Karma has a sense of humor, I said. Mom? He leaned closer to the camera. When are you coming home? I glanced at Casey, who nodded encouragingly. I still have more to do here, more stories to tell. But soon, when everyone's ready. Including you? Including me. I picked up my camera. I'm not the same person who left, Elijah. I need you to understand that. I'm starting to, he said. The photos you've been sending, you look like yourself again. Like the mom I remember from when I was young. After we said goodbye, Casey brought over 2 glasses of wine. Well, that was intense. Think he really understands? I think he's getting there. She clinked her glass against mine. Question is, what's your next move? I pulled out my journal, turning to the last unmarked destination. Ever been to Machu Picchu? The estate's front gate looked exactly the same as when I'd left, but everything else had changed. I adjusted my camera strap and glanced at Casey, who'd insisted on accompanying me for this final act. Ready? She asked. No, I admitted. But it's time. We hadn't announced our return. After 9 months away, I wanted the element of surprise on my side one last time. As we approached the front door, voices drifted from the open window of my study. The Historical Society was a fake, Elijah was saying. The buyer too. Mom orchestrated everything. To punish us. Lorelai's voice was thick with tears. No, Elijah replied. To teach us something. Look at these photos she's been sending. Look at her. When's the last time we saw her this alive? I chose that moment to ring the doorbell. The silence that followed was deafening. Then footsteps, running. The door flew open and there stood Elijah, staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. Hi, honey, I said. Surprise. He pulled me into a crushing hug before I could say more. Over his shoulder, I saw Lorelai appear in the hallway, her face pale. Mom, Elijah's voice cracked. You're really here. With a friend, I added, gesturing to Casey. Hope you don't mind. We moved to the living room, where evidence of the past 9 months lay scattered across every surface. My photos, legal documents, property records. Lorelai's mother was notably absent. She moved out last week, Lorelai said, following my gaze. Said she couldn't handle the stress anymore. The stress of what? I asked, though I knew the answer. Living in someone else's home. she replied quietly, feeling displaced. I set my camera down and pulled out a thick envelope. I brought something for both of you. Inside were photos from my journey: temples in Tibet, markets in Indonesia, mountains in Peru. But these weren't the polished shots I'd sent them. These showed the real story. Casey and me laughing over missed trains, sharing meals with locals, getting lost in ancient cities. You look so happy, Elijah said, studying each image. I am happy, I confirmed. Happier than I've been in years, and that's partly thanks to you both. Lorelai's head snapped up. What? You forced me to remember who I am. Not just someone's mother or grandmother in waiting, but a woman with her own dreams and stories. By trying to send you away, she whispered. By showing me I needed to stand up for myself, I corrected, though your method could have been better. Casey cleared her throat. Show them the other thing. I pulled out another envelope. My lawyer drew these up last week. New arrangements for the estate. Elijah took the papers hesitantly. Mom, you don't have to. Read them, I insisted. As they read, their eyes widened. The documents outlined a clear succession plan. The estate would remain in my name, but with a formal role for both of them in its management. Not as owners, but as partners. Partners? Lorelai's voice shook. If you want, I said, but with conditions. First, this remains my home as long as I live. Second, I'll continue traveling and photographing. Casey and I are starting a documentary series. Third, Casey chimed in, you both need to learn about property law and historical preservation, for real this time. Elijah laughed despite himself. That's fair, more than fair considering what we did. There's one more thing, I added, reaching for my camera. Come here, both of you. I showed them the display screen, a photo of the three of us from last Christmas before everything went wrong. Then I started clicking through more recent shots. Elijah looking stressed in Freddie's office, Lorelai arguing with her mother, both of them slowly unraveling under the pressure I'd created. That was cruel, I admitted, but necessary. The question is, what have we all learned? Lorelai spoke first, her voice steady for the first time. That respect isn't about age, it's about recognizing someone's worth, their story. And that family means supporting each other's growth, Elijah added, not controlling it. I smiled, taking one final photo of this moment, their faces open, understanding, changed. Then I think we're ready to write the next chapter. Together. Casey pulled out her laptop. Speaking of chapters, wait until you see the book proposal we're working on. How to Outfox Your Family, a photographer's journey of revenge and redemption. You're writing a book? Elijah asked. Among other things, I said, standing to look out at my garden. I'm done being just one thing. Mother, photographer, homeowner. I'm all of them and more. And we're okay with that, Elijah said firmly, giving Lorelai a meaningful look. She nodded, wiping her eyes. More than okay. We're proud. Outside, the garden where this had all started was blooming with new life. Like us, I thought, it just needed some pruning to grow stronger. Hold still, I called out, adjusting my camera lens. The light's perfect. Elijah and Lorelai posed on the garden bench, the same one where I'd overheard their plot that started everything. Now it was the centerpiece of my latest photography exhibition. Family ties, a journey of redemption. Mom, my face is freezing, Elijah complained. Just one more, I promised, capturing the moment the morning sun hit their faces. The photo would complete my collection, showing how far we'd come. Casey appeared beside me, reviewing the shots on her tablet. These are gorgeous, Val. The gallery is going to love them. Speaking of the gallery, Lorelai stood, brushing off her dress. We need to finalize the catering for opening night. And the Historical Society wants to know if they can feature the estate in their genuine preservation program. I caught the emphasis on genuine and smiled. Karma comes full circle, doesn't it? Don't remind me, she groaned, but her eyes were warm. Though I have to admit, your revenge taught us more than any gentle conversation could have. Inside, the estate hummed with activity. My old study had been transformed into a proper photography studio where I taught weekend workshops. Elijah managed the business side, while Lorelei, surprisingly, had discovered a passion for architectural preservation. "Your mother called yesterday," I told Lorelei as we reviewed the exhibition layout. "She's enjoying her new apartment." "She is," Lorelei nodded. "And she wanted me to tell you she's sorry. Again, for everything." "Water under the bridge," I said, selecting another photo for display. This one showing Lorelei and her mother sharing tea in the garden, finally finding their own balance. Casey hung up her phone, grinning. That was the publisher. They want to move up the book release to coincide with the exhibition opening. "Perfect timing," Elijah said, bringing in coffee for everyone. "Though I still can't believe you're actually publishing the whole story, Mom, including the fake buyer and tax scheme. Why not?" I adjusted a frame on the wall. "It's a story about growth, not just revenge. Besides, Freddie's already agreed to write the foreword." "Freddie?" Lorelei shook her head. "I still can't believe how thoroughly he played his part." "He's coming to the opening," Casey mentioned. "Said he wouldn't miss seeing the final act of the greatest performance of his career." As we worked, I watched my son and daughter-in-law moving through the house, my house, with a new awareness. They'd learned to respect the space, and me, in ways I never could have taught them directly. "Val," Casey called, "come look at this arrangement." She'd grouped 3 photos together. Me at the monastery where our journey began, Elijah discovering the truth about our scheme, and Lorelei making peace with her mother. Below them, she'd placed the original photo that started it all. Me on Machu Picchu, young and fearless. "It tells the whole story," she said softly. "Not quite," I replied, pulling out my camera. "Everyone gather round." They assembled beneath the photos as I set up the tripod. Even now, they sometimes forgot I could capture more than just images. I could capture truth. "Mom, what are you doing?" Elijah asked. "Completing the story," I said, setting the timer. "The real ending isn't about revenge or teaching lessons. It's about what happens after, how we choose to move forward." I joined them just as the shutter clicked, catching us in a moment of genuine connection. No posed smiles, no forced harmony. Just a family who'd learned the hard way how to see each other clearly. "Perfect," Casey declared, checking the result. "That's your closing piece." "You know," Lorelei said thoughtfully, "when you first left, I thought you were running away. But you were really running toward something, weren't you?" "I was running toward myself," I corrected. "And in doing so, I helped all of us find a better way forward." Elijah picked up one of the exhibition invitations. "Through the lens of truth, a family's journey from deception to understanding. Sure beats Sunset Valley Retirement Community." We all laughed, the sound echoing through the house that had witnessed our transformation. Outside, the garden where it all began continued to bloom, each flower a reminder that growth often requires a little disruption. "Ready for the next adventure?" Casey asked, showing me our upcoming workshop schedule. I looked around at my family. Not just Elijah and Lorelei, but Casey too, who'd helped me rediscover my strength. At the photos telling our complicated, messy, beautiful story. At the estate that had become not a battleground, but a sanctuary for all of us. "Always," I said, picking up my camera. "There are still so many stories to tell." And this time, I knew we'd tell them together.